Oh, gee. I thought wood shop was fun. You gotta figure stuff out. You know, the best part about this is after you do the figuring, you get to do it and you get to see if it works. It's practical knowledge. I got to figure out something with this box, and it has to do with how I'm going to put the whole thing together. What joint am I going to use? Am I going to use a miter joint? Am I going to use a dovetail joint? I could use a rabbet joint. I could just use a butt joint. Those are too easy. I either want to use a miter, which is very clean, or I can use a dovetail, which to me just looks really cool. And I get to use the dovetail jig, and I know a lot of people have asked me, how the heck does that thing work? So this might be a good time to actually put in some dovetails. What does a dovetail joint look like? You want to stay right there? Hey! Oh. A conventional box, an easy way to cut a conventional box is to cut a miter joint on that box. If we cut miters on this, you'll notice that there's no end grain that ever shows. It's a clean way of attaching two pieces of wood. The bad part, and if you watched my picture frame video, you realized this happens to be the weakest joint of all, because what we're really doing is relying that glue to put everything together. That glue has to hold that joint because you're literally gluing two pieces of board together on its end. You just cut a 45-degree angle, clamp it up, and then you pray that everything works out. But if you look at this box, it's nice and clean. I don't see any end grain. There's no joint on here. It looks great. Thing is, it's not necessarily a strong way of putting a box together, but you know, there's not a lot of pressure that's put on any one of these joints. The alternative to that would be a dovetail joint to kind of make it like a drawer. To put it into an interlocking joint so that when you put the thing together, it's going to stay together forever. It'll never come apart. As a matter of fact, it will probably fit so tight you don't even need glue on there. If you put this joint together, a dovetail to me is always the strongest joint. It's amazing when we think about the internet and all this advancement that we made. We've never made a better joint better than a dovetail. What does a dovetail look like? Looks like a dove's tail. This is an interlocking joint. The stress on this, when you think about it for a drawer construction, is when I put the side together with this front and I put a handle on this and try to pull this, there's stress every single pull on this joint right here. If I put a rabbet joint on here and just shoot a couple of nails in there or glue it in, there's always pressure from the front to pull across from the side. When you look at this dovetail joint, the dovetail joint is larger, and when you look at it, it's larger on the back than it is in the front. So as a result, if I try to pull this apart, it will never ever come apart front to side. It will only go apart if I tap this side out from the front. This interlocking joint is a tight joint. It will never ever come apart, and it's always cool. It's a nice little conversation piece. So I think I'm going to do that. Thing that I have to figure out is if I need my box to be exactly this size, 5 7/8 by 13, I have to allow for this joint on my sides. My sides would normally be 5 7/8 from here all the way to the front. But when you look at this, they're actually set back by 1/4 of an inch or so on the front and the back. So this side piece, if I need it to be 5 7/8 long, is actually going to be 1/4 of an inch less because this back and this front extend past. So I have to allow that 1/4 of an inch over here and also the 1/4 of an inch here. Keeping in mind, this is only 1/4 of an inch because this wood has been surfaced down to 5/8 of an inch. The actual depth of the dovetail is about 3/8 of an inch. But I'm subtracting 1/4 and 1/4, or a 1/2 inch from the overall size, which is 5/8 of an inch, to get the length of this side piece. The front and back remain the same. They're going to be 13 inches regardless of whether I sneeze, whether I get taller, or whether I eat porridge. It's still going to be 13 inches long. So the front and the back, they're easy. I have to worry about making this difficult mathematical equation that I probably did in second grade. Just like life, we always have to find a common denominator. That's what Jesse Jackson said. So the common denominator here is going to be 4, no, 6, no, 8. I'm subtracting a ½ inch from 7/8. I can't subtract bananas from oranges. I have to have both oranges. So I'm going to convert these bananas to orange. I'm going to convert, stay. Do you think that's going to stay? No way. No way. I want to convert these bananas to these oranges. To do that, to get this to be 8 on the bottom or the lowest common denominator, I'm going to multiply this by 4. If I multiply this by 4, I get 8. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. I multiply that by 4. So I have 4/8. Can I subtract 4/8 from 7/8? Yes, now I can. Which would be 3/8 of an inch. So that takes care of my fraction, and it's 5 inches. So instead of my length of my sides being 5 7/8, they're going to be 5 3/8. And that way, when I put the dovetail together, it will give me a measurement of 5 7/8. Again, the thinking is the hard part. So now what I want to do is I want to take my 2 boards that I cut. I have to locate them because I'm not a very organized person. Oh, they're over there. Thank you, cameraman. And I'm going to cut those, 2 to be 5 3/8 and 2 to be 13 inches long. Is that okay? Is that right? Am I making a mistake? No? Well, then let's do it. Come on. Come with me. Bop, bop, bop. Are these? Those aren't my piece. Oh, it's these because they're 5/8 of an inch surface down. Let's come over to the old chop saw and we'll cut these to the exact length that they have to be. Hey, here's that wine holder. All I have to do is wax that and that bad boy will be done. Another project. Satisfying yet another drinker. Yes, indeed. If we take a look at these 2 ends, remember, let's go back over to here. I said you have to do these things in order to get a nice square cut. We have to cut it to a workable length. We said we were just using my board the way I left it. I was able to figure out a way that I can get this without cutting a long board. But now what we're going to do is we're going to square an end. My question to you is this a squared end? No. What would they say in Linden? Hell no. That ain't no squared end. Is this a squared end? It still has paint from the lumber yard. So that's not a squared end. Neither one of these are square, so we're going to square an end. I can't make a mistake with this because, remember, I jointed an edge and I ripped it to width on the table saw. It's the reason why you guys always go from the jointer to the table saw, cut it to width, and make the 19-step journey over here to this chop saw or the radial arm saw to square this end. That's what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this to length, square the end on both of these first. It doesn't really matter which end I cut, or does it? It doesn't on this one because this board's fine. It does on this one because I got that chip. I said I don't want to use the chip. I want to get rid of the chip. Jackasses square this end and then they think about it later, not me. I'm going to square this end because I'm a good guy. Safety glasses on. Let me square one end up on each one of these pieces. And like I said, it doesn't matter. Roll my sleeves up, glasses on, nobody's around. Take the machined edge, butt it up against the fence. I'm going to slide this bad boy over, making sure my left hand holds the stock. Remember, I can square the end and just take a little bit off like this. I could also square it up like this. But if I do that, then I'm probably not going to get my 2 pieces, one 5 3/8 and one 13 out of it. So I want to take off as little as I possibly can, and that way maybe if I say a prayer, I could avoid that. Let's give this a shot. I always wondered why older people did that. My father used to do that all the time. He would lick his fingers, and I'm like, what happens when you get older that everybody does that? It's the dust that's on the board. It'll just slip and slide. So I always lick my fingers, slide my board over about midway into my saw cut, hold my left hand up against the fence, right hand on the stock and also on the handle. No, my right hand's on the handle, left hand's on the stock. I'm gonna bring it down and make a cut. I'll slide it off to the left-hand side. I guess I should have licked my fingers. That's my squared end, not to be confused with this unsquared end. I'm going to put an X on that end. And then what I'll do is grab this board. It doesn't matter which end I use. I'll probably just square this end up. I don't know why. Just move me. The spirit moved me. I'm taking my time. I don't want to go really fast because, you know, the saw blade is running in this direction. This area on the back side of the fence is open. If you move really fast, you'll probably chip this side out a little bit. Now my question to you is, I have to make 4 cuts here. I have to cut 2 pieces to 13 inches, and I need to cut 2 pieces to 5 3/8. So the question is, which is the best way to do this? 13, this piece I know is just 22 inches. It's not long enough to get 2 pieces out of one board. So I'm going to cut 1/13 out of this one, and then I'll cut the 5 3/8 out of the other side that's left over, and I'll do the same thing on this one. The question is, which cut do I make first? Do I make the 6-inch cut for, I'm sorry, the 5 3/8 cut, or do I make the 13-inch cut? The correct answer would be always cut the longer one first. It's always just a good habit to do. In this case, it really wouldn't matter, but I'm telling you right now, make the longer cut first. So what I want to do is, I want to get a tri-square. I also want to get my little stop here, and I'm also going to get a regular clamp, because when I cut my piece 5 3/8, I don't know that I could use that stop which I made for our fence. I know that it's going to be long enough where I can put it on this area. The other thing I want to do is get a tape measure. What do you think I forgot? Yeah, tape measure. Let me go get it. You can stay there. No need to follow. No need to follow. Sorry for the delay. No. All right. So here's my squared end. I said I'm going to measure 13 inches, so I butt the end of the tape measure right up against the end of the board. I'm going to, you know what, I should be more accurate. I tell you, getting old really sucks. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh boy, don't even tell me. I bet you I left my glasses there. Well, I could see it. I was just kidding. I could see 13 pretty well. I think I could see 5 3/8 pretty well too. I just wanted to make you feel better at home. Here's my mark. I'm going to cut this to 13 inches, but I'm going to draw a tri-square up against it. Every idiot in the world does this. They draw a line like that. Make sure you butt the squared end of the tri-square up against your machined edge. Slide that over. I mark it. And what I always like to do is put an X on the bad side, my waist side. Now I'm going to mark out my other piece. This is my squared end. Again, I'm going to mark it to 13 inches. So I put the end of the tape measure up against the... Whoa! What? I don't have to do that? Why? Oh! The stop. Nice. Now you're learning. So if I am going to cut more than one piece to the same length, I can use that stop. That's exactly what I'm going to use. Now you guys are thanking. Now you're thanking. There you go. So I'm going to take my board, put it up against here, up against my miter saw, slide this over, and I'm going to bring the saw down. What I want to do is actually see where this lines up. Do I get this part of the fence? And the correct answer is I don't. So I'm going to have to set up a little stop, which I can use with a deep throw clamp and just a larger board. I can set up a stop by clamping this over to this existing fence, and that'll still work. Let me get my glasses on to make sure I'm accurate. Remember, I'm cutting to the right-hand side of the line. I want to leave the line. And what stinks is that they switched the lighting in this shop because you actually have to have X-ray vision to see a line here because there's so many shadows. I'm going to bring the saw down, see that it cuts to the right-hand side of that line, leaving the line. I'll hold this in place. I'll try to make sure it stays right there. If you were here and I was setting up the stop with you, I would tell you to hold on to that so that it doesn't move, and then I would clamp this down for you because I'm a nice guy. Let's check to see how accurate that is. Looks pretty good to me. Looks like it's about 13 inches. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this cut. I'll make the cut on the other piece. Left hand, always try, if you can, to hold what's in between the stop and the blade. Because I have seen people hold pieces like this where this board kind of wiggled because of the vibration of the saw. And if that happens, sometimes that piece will kick back. It will cause it to move off the fence. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, which piece do you hold when you're setting up a stop? And you always want to hold, the correct answer here is hold what's in between the stop and the blade. Always, if possible, hold what's between the stop and the blade. When wouldn't you do that, or when it becomes tricky, is when that stop is very, very close to the blade. Even me, a moron, would not hold my hand that close. Remember, it's always safety first. So now with this set, I'm going to make this cut. I don't even have to measure my other piece. I'll cut them both, so I'll have two pieces 13 inches. Left hand, all the way off to the left-hand side. No reason to put it right up against the blade. Make the cut. And now I'm not going to move it, because it's wedged in between the stop and the blade. I always wait for that to come to a complete stop. This is now my squared end. I think I can tell because this side's painted, but just because I don't want to make a mistake, I'll put an X on that end. This piece should measure out to be 13 inches. Why? Because I can see, believe it or not, just a shadow of the pencil line. How good is this, dude? Put it up against there. I'm right at 13. It's perfect. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to cut my piece. Remember, I'm getting rid of this. So I'm going to put my squared end up against the same exact stop. Don't slam it. Just place it up against there and make the cut. These pieces have to be exactly the same exact length. Why? Because you put them up against the same exact stop. So here's my front and back, cut to exactly the same length. Those are DONE finished. Now what I want to do is I want to measure my other piece to be how long? 5 7/8. So what I'm going to do is what? 5 3/8 because I'm cutting the dovetail. Oh, snap. I got it. So thinking, I got it. 5 3/8. Oh, yes. Tape measure. Squared end. This is the better of the two. Butt it up against the end, my squared end, and I'm going to put my mark at 5 3/8. Right there, that looks pretty accurate to 5 3/8. When can I not do this? When I can't read a ruler. That's why every single day, if you do nothing else in this shop, yank this ruler out and take a look. A 16th, an 8th, 3/16, a quarter, 5/16, 3/8, 7/16, a half, 9/16, 5/8, 11/16, 3/4, 7/8, 15/16, 1 inch. You should know that. You should know that by heart. All right. There's my mark at 5 7/8. 5 3/8. I'm going to double check that in the light. Yeah, that looks pretty accurate. So now I'm going to cut the same way. I'm going to favor the line. Take my board, put it up against the fence. This is still fairly safe. I can put my left hand over here and still feel pretty comfortable. I'm going to make sure that my blade is slightly to the right-hand side of that line. I'll slide my stop over the same way as I did it before. And gingerly, like on, Gilligan's Island. What was that? Gilligan's, what was the name of that show? Gilligan's Island? Was it? That doesn't sound right. Dang. Yeah, Gingerly. The movie star, Gingerly. Yes, indeed. So right now I set up my stop at 5 3/8 of an inch from this end. I'll place it here. I just want to double check that everything is right, and it sure looks right. I'm going to make this cut. After I make this cut, the next thing that I have to do is say a prayer. Here we go. I hold on to it. I'm not moving it away from the blade. No reason to move it away from the blade. I want to double check that this is 5 3/8. And it is right at 5 3/8. Now, I'm not even going to measure this. I'm going to hope that I get most of that crack or that check out of the way. Take it, butt it up against the fence. Let me say a little prayer here. Let's give it a shot. This could be a little problem up against the fence. So I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to cut it this way. Left hand again, all the way to the left. And let's see how I did. I have a little check there, but you know what I could do? I can cut the bottom groove for my box over there. I think I'm going to do that. So let's take my pieces now. We're going to walk over and start to lay these out for my dovetail. When I do that, I'm going to need a pencil. I'm going to actually kind of set the thing up. And I'm going to use that dovetail template for the first time, and you could finally see how something that everybody passes in the shop is used, okay? Any questions? I got a question for you. My question to you is, what is the strongest joint that we can use in the shop? The strongest wood joint that we could use in the shop. And your answer to that one is going to be the joint that I'm going to use. Jackson's going to use the dovetail. So, dovetails for my box, dovetails for everyone. You guys have a great day. Tomorrow, over to the dovetail jig, and we'll cut some dovetails for you.